Hello and welcome. In this video, I will be introducing you to the CSS display property. The CSS display property specifies how an element is displayed. The display property can be used to control the layout. Every HTML element has a default display value depending on what type of element it is. The default display value for most elements is either block or inline. What are block level elements? A block level element always starts on a new line and takes up or occupies the full width available. So a block level element will stretch out to the left and right as far as it can. The paragraph element or the P element is an example of a block level element. So it occupies the entire width available and it will stretch out far to the left and to the right as far as it can. Other example block elements include a div. A div basically is a division of a web page. When you section out a part of a web page, that is known as a div. So a div is a block level element. H1 to H6 is also a block level element, and the paragraph, which we've already covered, is also a block level element. What is an inline level element? The inline element is different from the block level in that with an inline element, it does not start on a new line and it only occupies as much width as necessary. So it will only take up the width it needs. An example of an inline element is the anchor element, which you need to add a link to a web page. It will only take up the required space it needs. Other example of inline element apart from the anchor element is the image element, which is the IMG element. IMG is the element you need to add an image to a web page. So by default, it is an inline level element. So I've got my image here on my page, which by default is an inline element. So the method of display is inline. So if I want to, for example, center this image, I will have to do two things. I'll have to reapply the margin of the image to probably give it a margin of 0 and ortho. And I will also change the display behavior from inline, which is the default. I'll change it to block so that it displays it in block. So let me show you how I would do that. So this is my CSS. Just need to create some space on my CSS. So I'll just tab down here and I'll type in the name of the element, which would be the selector IMG, and I'll do my curly braces and I'll separate the curly braces, and in between the curly braces is where I will define my CSS rule. So I'll say display. Okay, the display of the image, I want it to be block. So the default is inline, but I'm changing it to block. Okay, so we're going to display in block, and I want to change the margin. I'm going to give the margin two values. First value is going to be a 0, and the second value I'm going to make it auto. And you can see I misplaced my semicolon, that's a semicolon, you can see it has centered the image. So when you have margin and you specify two values, the first value here goes to the top and the bottom, second values go to the left and the right. So just by changing the display property to block and the margin, I've been able to center the image. If I just drag that along, so you can see the image is now centered using the CSS properties I have just applied. In this video, I introduced you to the CSS display property and also illustrated how to use the display property. Before I wrap up this video, I just want to comment out this text here. So you feel free to play around with any of these elements here. Just play around with the CSS. If you want to make changes, feel free to do so. So I'm going to go into my index.html and comment this out. Again, comments are useful. You can use them to hide things because the browser will not display them. The browser will ignore anywhere there's a comment. So I'm just going to look for where that paragraph is. It is here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a comment, HTML comment. So you do that with a less than sign, exclamation mark, two dashes, and I'll close it here. All right, and that should take care of this. If I just save that, you can see now that has disappeared and this image here has taken up that space and jumped up a bit. So let me just expand that. Yep, so that's it. So if I want later, I can reposition this, or if I want to add another text, I can go back there and add it. At least you know how to do that now. So it's very important to be able to try different things out. You can comment certain aspects out of your code if you don't want them to display, so that you can see how the page looks without that. And if you decide you want the item again, just remove the comment and the text or whatever element will now display. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.